We have a breaking story, though. We're going to come back with that in just a moment. First, this is Today on NBC.
Nobody on September 10th was expecting what was going to happen on September 11th. And the world changed.
Go beyond the memorialization and start to understand the complexities of these issues, and that there isn't an easy answer.
It was like we're living through history, right? The immediate aftermath.
Historians are no better at predicting what's going to happen tomorrow than anybody else. But the day after tomorrow, the historians are going to be the ones who explain why what did happen was inevitable.
Bill Keene once said, "Yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, and today's a gift." After all, history is what has set us up for today.
So say, if you don't like the world today, blame me and my generation. We're the ones who created this world. But you've got the rest of your lives to change it. So if 50 years from now, when you become as old as I am, if you don't like the world then, you've got to look in the mirror and blame yourself.
The Twin Towers rise 110 stories into the air.
Today, the majority of Americans remember where they were on September 11th, 2001. But there are millions of minds in schools that weren't even born yet.
Now, of course, my students don't remember 9/11. Most of them weren't even born on 9/11. And so we have to keep reminding ourselves, we teachers of history, that our lived experience is different than the lived experience of our students. And we need to adjust accordingly. So for anyone of my generation, 9/11 is really current events, and you don't have to explain what happened.
But what we see as current events is history to those that were born after. So teaching the raw emotions many of us felt on that day is a challenge many teachers face.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
They know no more about 9/11 directly than I knew about World War II. I was born in the 1950s.
Students just don't know anything about it coming in addition to lack of information, sort of misinformation coming into their classes.
In 2019, Dr. Stoddard released a new study that polled over 1,000 U.S. middle and high school teachers about the teaching of September 11th. The study showed that those that knew about the day, some of their details were actually wrong.
Some of what they knew, for example, came from their family members, and it wasn't necessarily accurate. Or some of them were searching it and finding conspiracy theory videos and things online, questioning whether the story that was being told in the books was accurate in terms of, the role of the U.S. or how the towers fell, all of the different sort of common conspiracy theories that are out there.
I take it as my professional obligation to try to teach my students how to think, how to weigh evidence, how to think analytically, how to pose skeptical questions of just about anything. To teach my students how to think, but not what to think.
It seems to me that a lot of teachers feel the duty to teach young people about it because they're going to be the ones paying for it, not the people currently who are driving the decisions that are being made.
You weren't alive when it happened, but you can still see evidence of what it produced.
This is a day when all Americans from every walk of life unite in our resolve for justice and peace. America has stood down enemies before, and we will do so this time.
All historical events impact each generation differently. The saying, "Do you remember where you were?" is nothing new. The answer actually depends on which generation you're asking.
It's those moments that you will never forget where you were when you got the news that it happened are for your generation, and they're not for next generations. I think everybody of my generation, probably including you, can remember where you were when you heard the news about the planes crashing into the Twin Towers. But of course, that's not the case for my parents' generation. My mother used to say that the thing that she can remember more than anything else is where she was when she learned that Franklin Roosevelt had died. And for people of my generation, older than you, I think we all remember where we were when we heard that John Kennedy had been shot. And that was a big deal. So time passes on.
As time passes on, so do new events, and history is being made every single day.
But 50 years from now, will 9/11 be remembered? It'll be remembered, but it probably won't get more than a line or two in history books. There will be other things that will seem to be more important.
Another challenge teachers have faced through the years is the way that Muslims have been portrayed.
And so many of them noted that they were hearing things from their students again either misunderstandings of Islam, this association of Muslims with terrorists, that this was in the national rhetoric at the time and was starting to filter into their classes. And so they were a little worried about broaching some of the subjects because they're worried that could be potentially sort of harmful for students in their classes.
Okay, so my first name is Asad, A-S-A-D. Last name is Don. My title is writer and organizer.
Assad was living and going to school in New York City on September 11, 2001. He recalls the years after that tragic day.
It was like we're living through history, right? The immediate aftermath, the lessons were still being formed. It wasn't like they were cooked and they were tested. No, they were still being formed in many ways. So for me, it was very disorienting because there was a strong fervor of beating the war drums, right? Immediately after, there was a strong sense of we need to defend ourselves from them. We the civilized against those, they the barbarians, right? And that's kind of how I received it.
And the other piece that often goes missing now is, one of the big threats in the 1990s was domestic terrorism, anti-government groups, white supremacy groups. And they talk about them on that day of the broadcast. They talk about the Oklahoma City bombing, for example, and then sort of forgotten as everything became about sort of Muslim terrorist groups after 9/11 and the threat that they posed. And today now this comes back a little bit for full circle in terms of looking at some of the domestic terrorist groups in addition to what's going to happen after the U.S. leaves Afghanistan in terms of does it become a place where you see terrorist groups, training and being harbored again.
The history of the United States includes many episodes that Americans are not and should not be proud of. We can look to the past to see how previous generations have dealt with these disruptions, with these challenges. And we can hope that we can learn something like that and that we can deal with these challenges with wisdom and with grace and with kindness.
I'm a New Yorker. I've lived here all my life. I felt the pain too, directly. But at the same time, I think if we truly want to heal as a country and as a people, we need to contend with everything that World Historic event entailed. And that includes the wars that were begun. It includes what became known as enhanced interrogation techniques, right? How did we get to this point? These are all questions I think that we need to contend with. And I think part of how we teach and remember 9/11 has to include that.
History isn't pretty, but it's what we can learn from in those moments that will have lasting impacts on future generations.
Go beyond sort of the memorialization and start to understand the complexities of these issues and that there isn't an easy answer. And start to question the next time, what should we be doing as a country in terms of foreign policy and attempt to maybe learn from it. It's always a goal of history education, although I don't think we're always very good at it, is sort of learning from the past to not repeat it. It's often said, but I think rarely done.
Hey everyone, Cody Broadway here. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out the NBCLX YouTube channel. Be sure to click here for more videos and also click here to subscribe to join the NBCLX community.